Hello everyone, welcome to this week's video. So this week we're going to be talking about something that has been trending in the news. As you guys may or may have not seen, Kanye West is at it yet again. So no, this is not your typical gossip video or filling you in the latest news that relates to him. This is more of analyzing everything that has happened with Kanye West in relation to his bipolar disorder diagnosis and how perhaps that diagnosis can be correlated to the loss of his mother back in 2007. So this was actually a topic that was suggested to me by my sister-in-law, Alicia, so kudos to you. I love it when people give me their, feedback and suggestions just because it makes my job that much more enticing and fun, just because I want to be able to talk about things that interest you guys. So for those of you that don't know who Kanye West is actually a 43-year-old American rapper, fashion designer, music producer, businessman, actor, husband to Kim Kardashian, and father of 4 children. I say all of his roles because I think it's important, because he is a celebrity, to also make sure we still attribute his humanness. It's sometimes easy to forget that celebrities too are human, and more than just their job titles, they do experience real human experiences, and they're not perfect. Again, this video is not meant to sway you either way. It's more of an informational, educational kind of video, so we can try to look at things from a different perspective, because it's human nature to want to judge. It's human nature to have perhaps 1 or 2 facts and then make an assumption and just continue, going about your life with that predisposed notion, rather than actually trying to investigate. Listen, what's going on here? Is there something more to it? How can we better understand it? And again, you may feel and think the same way after this video is done, and that's perfectly fine. My job here is not to sway anyone either way. It's simply to provide people with the facts and hopefully try to just bring awareness to mental health, as we've been trying to do for the past million years. So it wasn't until 2018, I want to bring it back a little bit just so we can have, again, the chronological event. So it wasn't until 2018 that Kanye actually opens up in an interview with David Letterman about his bipolar diagnosis. So just to be specific, he does have the diagnosis of bipolar 1. There is a bipolar 1 and 2. The difference between the two is that bipolar 1, the person experiences a full manic episode, whereas someone with bipolar 2 only experiences a hypomanic episode, which is like a level down from a full-blown manic episode. So I gave myself some notes just because I want to make sure that I'm clear, I'm to the point, as far as what he mentioned in his interview with David Letterman regarding his experience with bipolar disorder and what it's like. So one of the things that he did mention during the interview was that when he has these manic episodes, he feels hypoparanoid about everything. So he went on to say that during these episodes, he perceives everyone as an actor. So therefore, he really doesn't trust anyone. He also feels that everything is a conspiracy, and he feels as though the government has placed chips inside of his head. And he also feels that he's being recorded while all this is happening, and also that people are trying to kill him. So I say these things and I highlight these, experiences that he himself mentions, because I think it's important to understand what people with mental health conditions experience. Sometimes I think that it's easy to dismiss people with mental health conditions as just people that don't have their head together, that just have issues. And we don't really try to understand, where it's like, if you can only put yourself in the shoes of a person that experiences this kind of paranoia, which we've all at some point in our lives have experienced paranoia for whatever reason, whether we felt unsafe, whether we felt like we were in danger, or whatever the case may be. So imagine feeling that sense of paranoia and feeling like everyone's out to get you in a constant basis. Every day you wake up, it's like with that constant feeling of, someone's trying to get you. And now the duration of bipolar disorder manic episodes do vary. So, for instance, the first manic episode that a person may experience can last anywhere between 2 to 4 months. Imagine feeling these intense feelings, feeling like you can't trust anyone, feeling like everyone's out to get you, feeling like you're by yourself, feeling disconnected for that extended amount of time. And now, of course, this is when the person is not seeking treatment or adhering to their treatment. That's one of the other things that has been mentioned regarding Kanye West, that he sort of picks and chooses when he goes on treatment. He understands that while he's in treatment, that he's much better, he's much more in control. However, he has mentioned in the past, and not only him, a lot of people have mentioned in the past that when they are under medication for this, their creativity is actually hindered. So therefore, if you're someone in the entertainment business, in the music industry, in whatever industry that requires you to be a little creative and, out there, then yes, this could be problematic, because if this is, the way you earn your income, then, what are you going to do? Do you choose your mental health, or do you choose, saying, screw it, let me just try to ride out the waves as long as I can until I guess another episode, kind of sets in. And this is, I'll give you guys an example. If you guys haven't watched the movie A Beautiful Mind, I totally recommend it, because while the depiction is more towards the schizophrenic diagnosis, I think it literally just pinpoints mental health in general, in terms of what it's like for a person to be in treatment versus not being in treatment. And in the storyline, it's about a professor, a mathematician actually, who won a Nobel Prize during the end of his life. How when he wasn't on the medication, he thought, spies were after him. He thought, people were out to kill him. He even heard these voices that told him he should kill his wife, because then, if he doesn't, then she'll turn on him. So it was pretty much him battling all of these things while still being brilliant. And when he did try to, adhere to his medication, to his treatment, he noticed that it impaired his ability to be able to see math and see numbers the way he did without it. So not to give you a spoiler, but pretty much the movie is just explaining how, from the eyes of someone with schizophrenia, how, pretty much they're able to deal with it with and without medication and treatment. So reeling it back to Kanye West. So you may be wondering at this point, what does all this have to do with grief or loss? Now, I want to talk about Kanye West's mom. As many of you may already have known, they were pretty close, pretty connected. They were pretty much best friends, confidants, everything else that you can think of in connection to a relationship between a mother and a son. Kanye West's mom did pass away November of 2007 as a result of a breast reduction surgery. She passed away the following day. So let's stop right there and actually analyze the loss and the magnitude of the loss for Kanye, what kind of impact that may have had for him. Now, these are all assumptions of mine based on the information presented. Kanye West himself is the one that knows what his experience is, so by no means am I trying to overestimate or underestimate his experience. It's just based on what information we have of him on the internet. This is the information I'm presenting to you guys. So being that she passed away suddenly, one could almost be as clever to suggest or hypothesize that this perhaps could have been a traumatic loss for Kanye. And the reason I say that is because in my previous videos, we have spoken about traumatic loss and the kinds of impact that can have on a person, and the fact that it can almost intensify the emotions that come up as a result of grief, because here you have the trauma and then you have the loss. What you have to be able to look at those things separately and then be able to try to understand them as a whole. So the reason I say that this perhaps could have been a traumatic loss for Kanye is because he could have perhaps thought that this loss was unfair, being that his mother really didn't have any other existing health conditions. He could have perceived this loss as unjust. He could have perceived this loss as, perhaps she struggled or perhaps she was in pain before she passed away. This was also something unexpected. Again, usually when death happens unexpectedly, it kind of intensifies that shock factor because no one was waiting for it. Not to say that death is ever expected, but again, when it happens suddenly, it again magnifies the intensity of the emotions that can come about it. Now, I say that to say that, it can be or it can't be possible that perhaps the loss of his mother, had something to do with the onset of his bipolar diagnosis. And now the reason that I say that is because when you actually research what are some of the triggers for the onset of bipolar 1 disorder, you actually find that there are 3 possibilities for which certain events can happen that can lead a person to have that first manic episode. So one of the options is that if you have a first degree relative, such as a parent, such as a sibling, that has a mental health condition, then you're that much more likelier to develop it yourself. Now, I want to say this with all the clarity in the world. Just because your parents or your immediate family member or you have a history of mental health conditions does not mean that you are absolutely guaranteed to develop that mental health condition or any conditions for that fact yourself. That's just saying that you're that much likelier. However, it is not guaranteeing it. The reason I say that is because oftentimes it's very natural for us to feel like, holy crap, like I'm going to turn out like my mom. I say that because I myself struggled with that up until recently, where to just disclose a little bit about my mom's mental health conditions. My mom had 3, not 1, not 2, 3 different mental health diagnoses. Now, which one she had, I have no idea. But according to 3 different psychiatrists, my mom had schizophrenia, my mom had bipolar 1 disorder, and my mom also had a form of personality disorder. Which one? God only knows. And I say that because, yes, as a kid and growing up and studying mental health, I was scared shitless. Like, holy crap, what if I turn out to be like my mother? What if I lose my mind like my mother? And those are things that I really had to work through, because while, yes, it's possible to learn some of the behaviors, the patterns, the ways we express ourselves through our parents, it doesn't mean that we can unlearn those behaviors, right? And a lot of the things that we're taught about mental health is that it is related a lot to do with your brain chemistry. So it almost takes away the control from you. It makes you seem like this helpless individual that, you just have a broken brain. So therefore, what are you going to do but just submit yourself to whatever label they have imposed to you? And again, I'm not saying that it does or doesn't have to do with brain chemistry, but I think mental health is much more complex than just imbalance of your brain chemistry, right? There's so much more to it. Has to do with your environment, has to do with how you were raised, has to do with what's going on in your life currently, or what happened in your life prior to you feeling this way, right? So it's more of a combination of things rather than just one simple answer where it's like, yep, it's because this happened. It's because, your brain's messed up. So another trigger that can lead to the onset of bipolar disorder is the death or loss of a loved one, or very stressful times or periods of very stressful times. And the last trigger is drug or alcohol substance abuse. So Kanye previously did admit to having opiate addiction, and we know that obviously he suffered the loss. He also went through or goes through high, intense, stressful times for extended periods of time because based on the information that I gathered, it seems that he's referred to himself as a doer, meaning that he's always busy, he's always working on something, he's always creating something. So it's almost like he's running away from himself through his projects. It's almost like he's deflecting whatever he may be experiencing internally and just trying to keep his mind focused and busy on other things so that perhaps he doesn't have to focus on what's really going on, in his head and his heart and his soul and his spirit. And that's something that, again, it's a defense mechanism where I have to put myself there. When I lost my mother, I tried to assimilate the loss for like the first 5 minutes. And after that, it was go time. It was like, okay, so now we have to plan the funeral. Okay, now I have to call these companies to let them know. Okay, now I have to do this. It was, in order for myself to be kept together, I had to keep busy because I wasn't ready to face the reality. So that's something that I can relate with him, where, like, yeah, we tend to do as a society so that we can run away from what's really the matter. And what's really the matter is that we're falling apart inside and we don't know how to express that. We don't know how to help ourselves. So shortly after his mother passed away, in 2007, and in 2009, as you guys may remember, the MTV VMA Award fiasco where he interrupted Taylor Swift's speech. That's when we publicly started to see that there was something erratic going on with his behavior. A lot of us, perceived it as, no, he was in his right to do it, while others, we kind of looked at him like, what's going on, Kanye? Like, are you going through something? Is this truly how you feel? Or are you just like impulsively reacting to something else? And he mentioned also in several interviews that since that incident, he's never been the same. So fast forward to 2016, where he was actually hospitalized in the psychiatric unit as a result of literally burning himself out after, several of his concerts during a tour. That was like the big first break of when, it started to become a little bit more apparent that he was struggling. So he actually was diagnosed in 2014. But again, it took some time for it to be made public, just because mental health is never something easy to talk about, especially when it has to deal with your own mental health. And I have to make this clear. Supporting someone with a mental health condition such as bipolar one disorder is anything but easy. It's perhaps one of the most complex, difficult, grueling experiences that people have to live through with their loved one. And a lot of times people decide to walk away from these types of people just because it becomes too much. It becomes too overwhelming, right? The ups and downs, the on meds, off meds, on treatment, off treatment. It's very difficult to have someone with this condition, be stable, realize, you can live with this. You can learn to live a normal kind of life, so to speak, and be able to continue to do the things that you enjoy doing. And I say that again from first-hand experience. I remember all the times that my mom was on and off her treatment, right? She had 3 different diagnoses, and I can't tell you which treatment belonged to which diagnosis, but I know that it was literally a roller coaster, just because there will be times she would take her medications, there will be times she would go to her therapies, there will be times she wouldn't take her medication, and there will be times where she wouldn't go to her therapy. So it was always a back and forth. And I completely agree with one of Kim Kardashian's recent statements, where it's like, you can't force the person that has this. You can't force them to get help. You can't force them to unsee things in a different way, or to have your perception, or to understand that you're not there to hurt them. And it's very difficult to support someone. I give it to her. Like, I know everyone has their own opinion of Kim, but I give it to her because I think the easiest thing would be to walk away from this, would be to say, hey, like, this is not the kind of environment for me or my kids. And like, even growing up with a parent that has this condition, it's heartbreaking, just because, again, there's a lot of things that you try to protect your kids from seeing, and there's other things that unfortunately your kids are going to know and perceive and just be able to pick up on. So this is why in my previous video I mentioned that it's so important to be able to try to understand or pick up on when your grief becomes too much to deal with, when it becomes too heavy, or when your emotions become too intense for too long of a time, because this is the time that you should be seeking professional help. Because having the support of your family is great, but sometimes family, we don't always know or have the answers of how we can best support people, experiencing these challenges. And seeking professional help doesn't mean that you have to give in to whatever treatment that they suggest. You can get 1, 2, 3, 5,000 different opinions and go with what feels true to you, what feels like it can work for your kind of lifestyle. So I know one of the things that Kanye also mentioned was the fact that, when he's in treatment, they try to over medicate him. And that's something that it's very real. I agree with him. There are several practitioners, there are several facilities like that just go with the more simple or easy fix kind of solution, which is like, here's your medication, rather than trying to approach it from a more holistic point of view where it's like, okay, let's try this medication, but let's also give you some therapy. Let's also try to, work something so that you can learn how you can manage through these things when they come up. Like, when should you know that you're about to have a manic episode? When do you know that you're about to go into a depressive state? What do you do when you're already there? Like, coping strategies so that when you are experiencing these things, you're not left on your own. You're not left thinking like there's something the matter with me or I'm broken. No, I actually have a profound respect for people that have mental health conditions and are able to keep going, because it is not easy to have a mental health condition and literally almost override what your brain or your mind is telling you with what in your heart is right, or is true, or is whatever. So for instance, bringing it back to the example of the movie A Beautiful Mind, when this man was being told by his thoughts, by his voices in his head, that he should kill his wife because eventually the government would turn her against him, when he had to tell that thought that felt, that seemed so true, I'm not killing my wife, I'd rather be locked up than do that. You don't know how much restraint, how much control that takes. Because again, when we see certain crimes being committed and you look into the mental health conditions of these people, not saying that everyone that commits a crime has a mental health condition, but when you see them acting out of impulse, it's like those are the things that seem natural for people that unfortunately go through these experiences. So I thank you all for tuning in. As I mentioned, this was not your typical video. It wasn't meant to keep you up on the latest gossip. It was simply meant to take an issue that I feel is pretty relevant for these times and be able to dissect it or try to understand it from different points of view. And again, I'm not trying to sway you either way. You have your own opinion, you're entitled to it. But thank you so much once again for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed, please make sure to subscribe. Turn on your notifications so that you are alerted every time I upload on a weekly basis. Also, if you're on Instagram, feel free to follow me at AliveAfterDeath0322. If you have any feedback, any suggestions, please comment below or send me an email at aliveafterdeath0322@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for all of your support, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Take care.